Amberly from Lakeside Loops, and today I'm going to show you how to make my Auden crochet bag. I'm really excited about this pattern. I love how simple it is. It's very beginner friendly, and the finished piece is just so chic and minimalist, but also classic and functional. To make up this bag, you will need, I used Lion Brand's Rewind tape yarn. It's really lightweight. It has a really great look to it. It's sort of washed out looking and makes the bag look really beachy and summery in my opinion. I also used a size G 4.25 millimeter crochet hook. You will need a darning needle, and that's to add this finished touch along the top of the bag, and a stitch marker. And we need the stitch marker because after a certain point we don't join our rounds, we just continuously crochet around and around, and so the stitch marker really helps you keep track of where you start and finish, which row you're on, or sorry, which round you're on, etc. As with all of my video tutorials, this is just to help you with the written pattern. So you will need to go to my website, lakesideloops.com, where you can find the pattern for free. I have a direct link to the pattern in the description of this video. You can find the free pattern there. You can also go to Etsy or Ravelry. Again, there's links on the blog if you'd like to purchase the downloadable printable version of this pattern. This video will just go over any parts that you might have questions about, anything you're not quite sure, you don't understand the wording of. The hope of this video is just to help with the written pattern. So you will need to go to the website. The stitch counts are there, very detailed instructions, pictures, everything you need for the pattern is on the website, or in the downloadable printable pattern you can purchase from Etsy or Ravelry. So as I said, I used Rewind tape yarn, and you will see in the written pattern I tell you that we're going to be holding a second strand of yarn behind most of our rounds. And so to do that, you can either use 2 balls of yarn and use a strand from each, or another idea is to use sort of the strand that's running around the outside of your yarn, and also you can pull a second strand from the middle, and that will give you 2 strands. Once I find the middle here, you just keep pulling, it'll eventually come out. There we go. All right, and that'll give you 2 strands of yarn to work with. So starting out, we're just using 1 strand of yarn, and I'm just going to make a knot and form a loop around my hook to start out. Now, as you'll see in the written instructions online, you're going to chain 2, and you're going to work 6 single crochet into the second chain from your hook. So not this chain, but the very first loop that you had on your hook, and you're just going to squeeze your hook in there and work 6 single crochets all in that same loop. So there's 2, 3, and you'll see it kind of forces you to start to go around in a circle. 4, 5, 6. Now at the end of this first round, we're going to join with a slip stitch to our first single crochet. So if you're not sure, sometimes it's hard to tell, was this my first single crochet or this one? You can kind of count backwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was this one right here. So I'm going to, again, sometimes it's hard to get your hook in there with these first few stitches. Get your hook in there and you're just going to work a slip stitch. So grab your yarn and pull it through. Alright, so for round 2, we are going to be holding our second strand of yarn behind our round. So here I have another strand of yarn. Again, this could be from the center of the ball of yarn that you're working with, or this could be coming from a second ball of yarn. You're just going to hold it behind your round, and I'll show you what to do with it in a second. So for round 2, we need to chain 1, and then we need to work 2 single crochets into each stitch around. So into my first stitch, which was the same one where I did my join, I'm going to insert my hook. I'm going to grab my second strand, and I'm going to place it over top of my hook. Then I'm going to grab the yarn that I'm working with and pull it through my stitch, and that's trapping that second strand of yarn behind my round. I'm going to complete my single crochet. So again, I need to work 2 single crochets into this stitch. So I'm going to put my hook through the stitch. I'm making sure that secondary yarn is over top of my hook. I'm grabbing the yarn I'm working with and pulling it through, and then completing my single crochet. So again, into the next stitch, I want to make sure that this second strand of yarn is over my hook, grabbing my yarn and pulling it through, and completing my single crochet. So you're just going to continue on like that all the way around, working 2 single crochets into each stitch. And again, make sure that yarn is over top of your hook, that secondary piece of yarn. Alright, so I've skipped ahead to the end of round 2, and we're going to finish off this round by joining with a slip stitch to the first single crochet that we made in this round. Again, you can count backwards if you're not sure which stitch is your first single crochet. You can sort of start here and go 1, 2, 3, and you can see in the written pattern you should have 12 single crochets in this round. So I know this is my first single crochet. I'm going to insert my hook, again making sure that this yarn I've been carrying around is over top of my hook. I'm going to grab the yarn I've been working with, pull it through my stitch and through the loop on my hook. That's going to finish off round 2. Now for round 3, it's a little bit different. We're not going to start with a beginning chain. We're just going to dive straight into the single crochets, and we're going to place a stitch marker after we make our first stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook into that same stitch that I just did my join, grab my yarn and pull it through and make a single crochet. Now I'm going to take my stitch marker and I'm going to place that into that first stitch. Sorry, this isn't the, there we go. Into that first stitch. That's going to tell me where my round starts, because from now on, when we finish a round, we are not going to be joining it with a slip stitch. We're just going to keep crocheting in a circle around and around and around. So when you come back around and you've worked into your last stitch, you're going to work your first stitch of round 4 into where your stitch marker is. So you'll take this out, work the first stitch of round 4, and then place this into the first stitch of round 4. So that's why a stitch marker comes in handy. Now for round 3, again, we single crocheted in that first stitch. Now we're going to work 2 single crochets into the next stitch, and that's going to be our repeat for this round. 1 single crochet and then 2 single crochets. Alright, so I've skipped ahead. I'm at the end of round 3 and it just sort of stops. It doesn't say to join, but it does say that for the remaining rounds we're going to remove this stitch marker, work the first stitch, so the first stitch of round 4 will go in here, and then replace the stitch marker. That's going to help us keep track. So this is the end of round 3. Round 4, I'm going to take this stitch marker out and I'm going to work my first stitch into there. So I've removed that, insert my hook, make sure I've still got that yarn I'm carrying behind all of my rounds, and work my first stitch, and then place that stitch marker back in there so I know where round 5 starts. Now for the next several rounds, we're just going to be growing our circle. So we're just going to be doing groups of 2 single crochets every so often, and that's going to make our circle grow. You'll see I stagger where to do the increases, the 2 single crochets. So here is the bottom of a finished bag, and you'll see that like there's an increase there, there's an increase there, there's one there. They're not all lined up straight on top of one another, because when we do that it creates angles and we don't end up with a perfect circle. You end up with kind of a hexagon. And you'll see in the written pattern I stagger where your increases, which are the 2 single crochets into 1 stitch, go, and that sort of helps you have more of an even circle as your bottom of your bag continues to grow, if you're wondering why it's written that way. I hope all of this is making sense and helping. And like I said, I'm just going over any of the parts that I think you might have questions about. So you are going to continue on doing the increases, forming your circle, and then you're going to start doing rounds that are just single crochets, and that's going to help your bag sort of grow up. And then you're going to come to a point where I ask you to start doing some decreases, some single crochet two together, and that's sort of to help taper your bag back in. Then you're going to get to round 73, and round 73 is where we are making this gap for our handles. So you are going to chain 25 and you're going to skip 25. So on this round you've stopped here, you have this big long chain, and I'll show you a picture. You have this big long chain, and then you're going to skip all of these stitches and make your next single crochet over here. You are going to have your secondary yarn that you were carrying behind your round. You just leave that. Make sure that it's not too tight or too loose. You just want to have it sort of slack, nice and loose there. We're going to pick that up again when we do the next round, round 74. So just leave that like that when you're making these slits, and again I'll show you a picture of what I mean. Now when you come back around for round 74, you're going to be single crocheting in each stitch around. So when you get to this chain portion, you're going to be working a single crochet into each chain, and just make sure that you pick up that yarn that you had left slack. Make sure you pick that up and work over top of it along with the yarn that you're already carrying around in your round. So for this section of the handle, you're actually going to be working over two strands, the one that was left slack and the one that you're already carrying around for your round. Alright, once you have completed all of your rounds, you're going to thread some of your yarn onto a darning needle. So you just stick it through the end of the needle like that, and you're going to be starting from the inside of your bag. You're going to be threading the yarn, so you're going to be threading the yarn around the top of your bag. So you start on the inside and you just go around and around. And you can see I already have it done here. I'm just threading it through again so you can see how I did it. So you're just always working from the inside to the outside into every other stitch from round 84. So you can see I've got my last, in between my last round and the round before that is where I'm sticking my darning needle in. I'm just pulling it through like that. And that just kind of gives a finished look. You don't have to do this step, but I just liked the look of it on my finished bag. So with that, your bag is complete. You can pull the handles through one another to create the look that you saw pictured online. You can hold it like this or put your arm through. I really love how simple this bag is, how quick it is to work up. It's very beginner friendly. I really hope that you enjoyed the pattern and that this video tutorial answered any questions that you may have had. I know it was short and sweet. I try to keep it as simple as I can so it's not too long of a video for you to go through on YouTube, but if you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much for following along. I can't wait to see your finished bags online, so don't forget to tag me at Lakeside Loops on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you guys. Take care.